Good evening, everyone. We are just giving everyone just a few minutes to join our presentation tonight. So just sit tight and we'll get started in just a moment. Seeing lots of folks joining the presentation. Good evening, everyone. We'll start in just a moment. Okay, so let's get started. Good evening, all. Welcome to Resilient Home Inside and Out. This is a presentation of MMSD, Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, and Milwaukee Public Library. My name is Kelly Bolter. I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator, and we are so excited to welcome Lauren Hayden and Jay Fiker this evening. We are also supported by Lydia Nimke, one of our librarians at Milwaukee Public Library. This is the first workshop this spring that we are co-hosting with MMSD that focuses on topics in sustainability and water management. And if you are interested in more programs like this, we encourage you to head to the library's website, mpl.org. We have a specific climate change page that lists all of our upcoming green and sustainability programs. Like I said, we've got quite a few workshops coming up this spring with MMSD and also Melinda Myers. So please, if you're interested, go ahead and register for those. We also have a monthly book club program that meets the last Monday of the month that is called Climate Action Book Club. And we discuss all kinds of books from fiction to nonfiction, memoirs that look at different aspects of climate change in our world today. So please check that out. And during this presentation, we just ask that everyone keeps their mics muted. We'll have time at the end for questions. So if you are wondering something during the presentation, you can throw that question in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll monitor that. And then, like I said, we'll have time at the end to address anything that comes up during the presentation. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jay and Lauren.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here with you all today. So today we're going to be talking about resilient homes inside and out. And as Lydia mentioned, this is the first, Kelly, I apologize. This is the first of several workshops as part of your climate series. So Jay and I are excited to be here tonight. I am a project manager with the private property infiltration and inflow team. And I'll let Jay quick do an introduction for himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Fiker. I'm also project manager, but in the sustainability department at MMSD. So it's good to be here with you all.
So yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about all the different things you guys can do inside and outside your home to make it more resilient. So our first step is to talk about what is resiliency. Next slide, please. All right. So resiliency is the ability to prepare and to respond to increasing climate disruptions. And we really are excited to talk with you guys all tonight as homeowners and residents, because it's really important for homeowners to get involved in climate resilience strategies, because southeastern Wisconsin and specifically Milwaukee are becoming increasingly urbanized and more dense. And we really need to make sure that everyone is doing their part to not only protect their home, but also to help protect their neighbors and their environment by managing water where it lands. And as we all know, climate change puts a lot of additional stress on our infrastructure. And we don't often think of infrastructure in our homes, but we do. The pipe that carries wastewater from your home to the street is considered infrastructure. The foundation of your home is considered infrastructure. And this increasing climate disruptions puts stress on that. So it's important that we're thinking about how we can protect those so that it can continue to serve you well. So what are those climate disruptions that are happening here in southeastern Wisconsin. That can include flooding, which leads to sewer overflows and more polluted stormwater. We're experiencing reduced air quality and extreme heat. I think you all can agree that even though we live in Wisconsin and it's currently winter, we experience the extremes. We experience 90 degrees in humidity and extremely cold. So there's been a lot of variability, but overall, our climate is becoming both wetter and hotter over time. And so our main focus today is going to be on resilience strategies for flooding and stormwater management. But many of the projects that we're going to talk today, especially Jay's strategies outside the home, have a lot of co-benefits that will address those other climate change issues, such as air purification, water quality improvements, cooling of the urban heat island, and the native plants that are drought tolerant. So our overview for today, we're going to start with who is MMSD, what do we do, and why specifically do we care about climate resiliency? And then we're going to move into the action items. So the first part will be climate resilient home. So specifically focused on areas in and around your home where you can make them more resilient to that flooding. And then next, we're going to focus on your climate resilient yard. And lastly, we're going to cover a few more ways to make an impact and get involved with some of MMSD's additional programs. So I'm going to hand it over to Jay to introduce MMSD.
Thanks, Lauren. So yeah, Lauren and I work at MMSD, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. And the important thing to note about this is that we are first and foremost a public health agency. So we collect and clean all the wastewater that comes our way here to Jones Island and also a plant down in Oak Creek. But, you know, our focus is really public health, and that, you know, if we didn't have a good working sewer system, things would go really down the tubes quickly. So we're really here to protect public health and do that through cleaning the water in a cost-effective way. And we use this through water resource management, leadership, and partnership, and that includes you. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So what a couple of the main categories that we do, like I kind of referenced, we collect the water that comes to us here, our treatment plants, both Jones Island and one in Oak Creek, and clean that and return it to Lake Michigan. But another important thing that we do is that we're charged with is managing the flooding in Milwaukee County. So not everyone really understands that, but you might see some projects that we're doing in rivers to kind of increase and naturalize the floodplain of rivers. And that's because that we are charged with actually managing the rivers too in our area. And that will come up and you'll kind of see why MMSD is actually holding a workshop like this, because both of these are impacted by what we do at our homes. So MMSD is not the city of Milwaukee. That's something that I think often gets confused for people. The city of Milwaukee is one of our largest customers, obviously, and they clean the water from Lake Michigan as your drinking water supply. But we serve all of Milwaukee County outside of South Milwaukee and outer areas of the exurbs, sort of like Menominee Falls and Mequon, you can kind of see here in this map. We collect all the water from this area in our sewers and then clean it at those two treatment plants I referenced. And that accounts for over 1 million people, 28 municipalities, and over 400 square miles. So it's a much larger area than just the city of Milwaukee. And that's just an important thing to reference, be aware of. And we're really world-renowned at how good we are at capturing and cleaning the water. Since 1994, when the deep tunnel went online, we've captured and cleaned 98.5% of the water that's come to us. For perspective, the EPA's goal is 85% to capture and clean. And so we are well above that. And sadly, many cities in the United States are somewhere around 60 or 65 and in a much worse shape than us. So this 98.5% is great. And we're, really world renowned in that respect, but we'd much rather be closer to that 100%. And that's where we'll talk to you, how about you can be part of that solution as well. So first, we're just going to talk about, kind of our area, what kind of happens here and why stormwater and water that falls here is becoming a larger issue, especially with climate change. So as you know, we get a lot of rain, sleet, and snow in Milwaukee each year. And that number is continuing to rise each year with climate change. And that 34 inches that we get has to go somewhere. And, obviously in the natural setting you see here on the left, when water falls, like in a forest or in, prairie, most of the water either goes down into the ground and cleaned or evaporates. And very little actually runs off, so 10%. Now in our more urbanized area like Milwaukee, where we've covered up, this natural surface with hard surfaces like our roofs, driveways, very little gets into the ground and less evaporates. And almost 5 or more than 5 times actually runs off right out into the rivers. So that runoff is sort of that sideways motion of water that you see, when it rains going down in the street. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about runoff. So instead of going down to the ground or evaporating, it's going sideways. And so where did it go before in our area? This map is one I actually made when I first started here at MMSD. Is a map of the old streams and rivers that existed here before development. And these green blobs you see are former wetlands. So, wetlands are uniquely designed to clean water that comes to it. But then obviously this was before we developed, and when it rained back then, the water would slowly go into the ground, soak in, and then come out into these rivers or flow into the rivers and move slowly through them and then get cleaned with the wetlands. And it was sort of nature's perfect treatment plant, if you will, that did a really great job of cleaning the water. And so then we obviously developed here and covered a lot of the surfaces here. These orange squares you see are actually hard surfaces. So they do not allow water to go down into the ground. They create that sideways motion of runoff. And you can also kind of notice these rivers, many of them have gone away. So if I just quick go back to this huge network of these rivers and streams and these wetlands, and then the rivers kind of become straight and, a lot of them disappear. So we thought we could control water with concrete and put it in these concrete channels. And then we put a lot of the rivers in pipes. And then we developed, and that has really caused some issues with increased runoff because the water doesn't have anywhere else to go. And so when it rains on your lawn and it gets, once it's saturated and it runs, or your sidewalk, it goes downhill into the street, into these storm sewers, which go directly to our rivers and ultimately Lake Michigan, where we play, swim, and also get our drinking water supply. So whatever goes in here ends up going directly here, which is our really great resource that we want to protect. It's on the ground, it ends up in our water. Now, what I should have been clear about, that is the most common way it works in our area, the separate sewer. That's the more modern way of sewers. There is a small section of our city, Milwaukee and Shorewood, small sections there that are in something called the combined sewer. And instead of a separate pipe that goes right to the river with rainwater, the rainwater actually goes in with the sewer water, like the wastewater, into the one pipe. So all of the things washing dishes, bath, laundry, go to the bathroom, mix with the rainwater and go all into one pipe. So that same storm sewer pipe mixes with all the stuff. And that's a smaller area. I'll show that to you in a second, but it's important to understand. And that's where you might have heard of the deep tunnel. So the deep tunnel was built as an extra storage because when it rains, that section of the sewer system really gets, overwhelmed. And so we can put that extra water into the deep tunnel until the storm passes and then pump it up to treat it. And so where else does the water go? Well, I have mentioned that we have sewers and this is our network here. We own 300 miles of sewers, and that's a nice extensive system that are kind of the big highways of the system. And they collect the water from the local municipalities who also own sewers. So probably the sewer out in your street is owned by the city. And that's 3,000 miles. But then another 3,000 miles, actually probably over 3,000 miles, is owned by you and other homeowners. So that pipe between your home going out to the street, your lateral, if you ever had to go roto-root or anything, is owned by you. And so in our area, over 3,000 miles of those are, privately owned. And I kind of just referenced the combined area. That's this area here in gray or green here that I was talking about. That's the combined, where the rainwater and the sewer water mixes and goes to Jones Island. All right. So what are some of the consequences? I've kind of mentioned, this water doesn't have a place to go, so it goes sideways. And, as we build more, develop more, that, increases how much runoff we have. Well, one of the big problems is, the water quickly rushes to the rivers. And then some of the rivers that we have, I kind of showed you earlier, are in these concrete channels where the water, gets in there and flows really quickly, causing a health and safety hazard for our community. So many people have unfortunately passed away by trying to jump in these rivers. Basement backups is another issue. So when the sewer system gets overwhelmed too quickly with too much water all at once, you can get basement backups. So those are obviously not a good thing either. And polluted runoff is another big problem. So this is actually the #1 source of pollution to our waterways, is runoff from the streets and going directly into the rivers and lakes. So in that separate area, anything you see on the ground next to a storm sewer, it doesn't get cleaned. It goes directly out to the rivers and lake. So just imagine those snowbanks at the end of the year, or end of the season, like right about now, how dirty those are. You can kind of see down here. And just imagining that going right out into where, we get our drinking water. So not good. And it's the #1 source of pollution. And, we're trying to find ways to obviously make this a better situation than it is. And then lastly, that quick moving water can pick up large things like trees and sediment and rocks, and causing, unusual erosion of stream banks that you might have seen in our, along our parkways and things like that. So that's another issue. Okay, that's my part for now. And I'm gonna pass this on to Lauren to talk about how to make a more resilient home.
Thank you very much, Jay.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So taking what we just learned about MMSD, our service area, and what are the consequences, like Jay said, we're going to talk about how you can actually make your home more resilient to help prevent these things. So Jay, next slide, please. Jay touched on this a little bit, but obviously MMSDs contributing to this too. Large-scale stormwater management is a key part of our mission here at MMSD, and something that we do at a watershed scale. And these projects are essential for managing large-scale flooding, reducing erosion, improving stream and river health, improving water quality, and then reducing demand on our public sewer systems. But next slide, please. You might have seen this coming, but small scale projects are also very key to the success of this. So each practice is key to capturing, cleaning, and keeping that dirty stormwater runoff out of our systems, and also from overwhelming our sanitary sewer systems. And Jay alluded to that, or showed you that map before, of what our current southeastern Wisconsin area looks like. And in the MMSD service area, over 60 to 70% of our impervious surfaces are on private property. So really the help comes from you. That's where we really need this. There's limited space for these large scale projects, and we really need everyone's help to manage water where it lands. So I want to quick introduce you to our Raincheck program. This was something that we rolled out several years ago to kind of help homeowners think of managing their water as a sort of a home audit, both inside and out. This checklist is actually on our website, and the format we're going to go today follows this, but essentially we're encouraging homeowners to, a few times a year, go out and really inspect your property and the infrastructure that's on your property, get to know it. And I would really suggest that you do it when it's raining or right after a rain event. That's how you're going to best know where water is moving on your property and how you're actually going to see evidence of water inside your home. So next slide, please. The number one priority that we're going to talk about today, there's a lot of great things, but the number one priority for getting water away from your home and reducing the risk of pooling and water seeping into your basement is making sure that the soil and concrete are sloped away from the foundation. This is absolutely key. And something that's actually pretty easy to check. So on this diagram here, it shows the bottom of your siding, your foundation, and then the grade, the soil there. And what you're really looking for is that there should be a 6-inch gap between the bottom of your siding and the soil. So essentially you should see about 6 inches of your foundation. And the slope that you're looking for is you want, thank you, Jay, you want 1 inch of slope for every 1 foot away from your house. So ideally you'd like that for the first 4 to 6 feet away from your house. And I could talk about this a lot more, but I know a lot of people are visual learners like I am. So I'm going to show you a quick video that's going to walk through exactly how to do this on your property. Give us 1 second here.
The most important thing you can do is keep water away from your house. Whenever it's raining, the water's pouring on your house, it's going to end up someplace. If the ground around your house is pitched toward the house, that means it's just going to funnel it right into the basement. So check the topsoil areas, the planting areas around your house. We put a level down here, and this is just about level. Well, that's not going to help any. What you're looking for on a ground surface, a soil surface, is a pitch of about 1 inch per foot so water runs away. That means that up here against the wall, it should be about 4 inches higher than it is out at the end of this 4-foot level. And that's what you're looking for. This means adding soil around the house, build it right up to window wells if necessary. But the point is, make sure that it's pitched away from the house wherever possible. And that means water goes away and not toward your basement. Once you've got the dirt around the house raked out, take your level and set it up against the house. And then go to the outside end of the level and lift it up about 4 inches. Now check the bubble in the center of the level. If it's level, that means that you've got a 4-inch pitch over 4 feet, 1 inch per foot. That's exactly what we want.
All right, thank you very much, Jay. So again, a pretty simple fix you can do, and I would especially encourage you to think about doing that this spring when we start to have more storm events and making sure that that's something that you can address. The one thing I would like to mention in that video that I have a caveat for is that ideally you do want 2 to 3 inches above that window well. If you build that soil right up to that lip, you're really not giving yourself a lot of space during those larger storm events. So I would recommend leaving about 2 to 3 inches. And also in these older homes, window wells can settle over time and they need to be raised. So you can actually dig them up and raise them, put soil underneath it. And maybe a cheaper, easier solution is to consider these taller wraparound window wells, or even considering some of those clear plastic covers to make sure that those are actually pretty tight and preventing water from getting in. Next slide, please. So moving inside the home regarding windows, this is a key area where people experience water coming through, and that could be due to shifting of the foundation that has caused cracks there on the frame. It could be due to poor caulking that's just dried out over time and needs to be replaced, or even rotted wood. So this is a good time to do a visual inspection. Again, I encourage you to go down to your basement during or right after a storm event and look to see if you see any water droplets along there. Maybe you see some moisture on the ground. This would be good evidence that there's water coming in. And again, if it's something as simple as caulking, do that, but it's worth keeping your basement dry. So please replace any failing or seriously leaking windows. All right, moving on. I would consider this your number 2 priority. So we talked about your number 1 priority is proper grading, keeping soil pitched away from your home. And your number 2 priority is maintaining your gutters and your downspouts. These play a really important role in keeping your basement dry, and properly functioning gutters and downspouts direct all of the rain that's coming down on your house and onto your roof away from your foundation and away from your basement. And some of the common problems that we see And gutters and downspouts are broken, separated, or missing gutters, clogged gutters. If you ever see plants growing in your gutters, you probably have a lot of sediment built up in there that needs to be removed. Downspouts without extensions, so allowing the water to come out of the downspout and immediately start pooling around your foundation. We are going to talk about this more, but you want that to be at least 6 to 10 feet away from your house. And then we've even seen downspouts sloped backwards. It might be obvious, but we really want to make sure that those downspouts are sloping away from your house and not sloping upgrade. So what does proper gutter and downspout maintenance look like? Well, it starts with cleaning your gutters 2 times a year, ideally in the spring and the fall. And again, inspecting your gutters and fixing any broken, bent, or separated gutters. Installing your downspout extensions 6 to 10 feet away from your home. I would encourage you to make sure that you're also looking at those connections. A lot of times, you're attaching a corrugated plastic piece to an aluminum metal piece. Make sure you're using the right fittings and that you're, putting the elbow or the downspout into the attachments, because if you do it the other way around, the water is just going to fall out. And then again, ensuring that your downspouts flow downhill. And right now in the winter, especially when spring is just around the corner and temperatures are starting to go up, clearing your downspouts of snow and ice, a lot of times they can get jammed up and there's actually not a good space for water to safely exit. So make sure that you go around your house in the next few days and make sure that they are free of snow and ice. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about related to downspouts, if you're sitting there and wondering, hey, I don't have downspout extensions, it's possible that your downspouts are connected to your foundation drains and your sanitary sewer. So why is the downspout disconnection important? Well, if you look at these pictures here, water that's coming off of your roof and entering your gutter will flow down into a pipe, and eventually it connects to your sanitary sewer lateral, which takes it out to the street. Now, ideally, the only thing that should be exiting through your sanitary sewer lateral is wastewater, and that's what it's designed to carry, and that's what it was sized on. During a storm event, if you now have wastewater going out in addition to stormwater, you're putting yourself at risk of a basement backup and also putting your neighbors at risk as well. So we highly encourage downspout disconnection. However, there's one important distinction, and that is whether or not you are in the combined sewer area versus a separate, and Jay touched on this before. We really recommend it in both areas, but we want to make sure that you can also disconnect safely and that you have sufficient space to be able to locate that discharge point, at least, again, 6 to 10 feet away from your foundation or your basement, that you have a pervious surface or an area that can soak in, like a lawn or a garden, that it's, again, you have slope to put that discharge away from your home. And also, is it going to be a nuisance to your neighbors, or is that going to discharge coming out of your downspout going to create an icy situation where it's just unsafe? So if you're ever unsure, the best plan of action is to call your municipality and ask them about downspout disconnection and making sure that you can do it in a safe manner. All right, so we have a fun little DIY project. If you're sitting here and you're saying, that sounds like me, I have ample space to disconnect and I'm ready to do a project, we're going to teach you how to do a downspout disconnect. So step 1 is going to be calling your municipality to find out, again, if you should disconnect. If you're in a separate sewer area, that's less of an issue. Your next step is that you're going to want to measure 9 inches above the sewer connection, and you're going to want to cut it right there with a hacksaw and take out that bit of your downspout. The next step would be to cap that pipe then that's connecting to your sewer with a rubber cap and a hose clamp. You can get that at Ace Hardware or your other hardware stores. And the next step would be inserting the downspout into the elbow attachment. Again, if you do it the other way around, water is going to be pouring out of there. And lastly, attaching a downspout extension to carry that water 6 to 10 feet away from your home. And all these instructions are also on our website as well, along with a lot of other fantastic information about managing water on your property. So foundation drain disconnection is different from your downspout disconnection. Your foundation drains are a series of pipes along your foundation, that collect groundwater and direct it away from your foundation and your basement. And In homes that were built between 1920 and 1954, it's very common to find your foundation drains connected to the sanitary sewer lateral. So again, this is a situation where we would want to disconnect to reduce your risk of a basement backup, reduce that demand on the sewer system. And again, just a reminder that these laterals are not designed for these heavy sewer events. Going on, getting to know your lateral. Thinking about this in a greater spot. Jay mentioned this earlier, and I'm glad he did. A lot of people are not aware that their lateral is actually the homeowner responsibility. And when I say lateral, this is the connection again that runs from your home and carries the wastewater. So all the toilet water that you flush down, showers, dishes, all that good stuff, and carries it to the main sanitary sewer connection. And this picture that we have right here is an example of a separate sewer connection. And if we were in the combined area, those two pipes, the stormwater and the sanitary, would be combined. Next slide, please. All right, maintain your lateral. So how do I care for this lateral? How do I know that it's in good shape? We're gonna start out with 2 rules. First one is gonna be don't pour grease or oils down the drain. This can later on, even though the water is hot and it may be liquid at that state, once it cools down, it can create solids and it can create massive blocks in your pipe. So never pour grease or oils down the drain, always throw them away. And the next is to only flush the 3 Ps: poop, pee, and paper. And I just want to emphasize that flushable does not always mean flushable. This word, really anybody's allowed to put it on their packaging and they don't have to prove that it's actually flushable. So that rarely are flushable wipes flushable. So it's always best to throw them away, because even if it doesn't create a clog in your lateral or in your street, it can create massive problems down the line for your city. So when is it time to get an inspection? If you're experiencing frequent basic backups to the floor drain, you're seeing debris around your drain during heavy rain events, perhaps you have slow running drain or toilets, or your home is just older than 1970 and it's never been inspected, it might be time to consider having your lateral inspected. This would look like calling a plumber or contractor to come out and do a CCTV, which is a televising of your lateral. And during that inspection, they're looking to see if there are any clogs, roots, cracks in your lateral that might be causing any structural issues. And your plumber can point out these issues and discuss repair options with you. And we do recommend that you always ask for a copy of the video to keep it as a record of the condition of your lateral or to be able to get future quotes. All right, lastly, so if you were listening to the last few slides and you said, hey, that sounds like something I'm experiencing at my house, I think I need to disconnect my foundation drains, or my drains have been running really slow and I think I might need to get my lateral fixed, I'd like to introduce you to MMSD's new program called Pipecheck. Pipecheck is a program that provides financial incentives to homeowners to complete sewer projects at a reduced cost. And so we refer to these as financial incentives. They're a set rate that come off of the total project cost. And again, the goal of Pipecheck is to eliminate these sources of stormwater or groundwater that are entering the system improperly and overwhelming it and putting you at an increased risk of a basement backup. The Pipecheck program is open to anybody in the MMSD service area and is for 1 or 2 family homes. And as part of the program, you must work with a Pipecheck approved contractor. If you're interested in learning more, on our website that's linked down below there, I have a full list of all the financial incentives, our list of the approved contractors, and more program requirements. So go there to learn more. All right. Before heading on to the fun part, which is creating a resilient yard, does anybody have any questions about the home part of our program?
So-
Lauren, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, somebody asked how much water gutters collect during a typical rain event. I'm actually gonna cover that in a little bit.
Awesome.
But, and I mean, so I'll get into that in a bit, but essentially, it definitely depends on how much it rains. But in a good storm event, you can get, and I'll cover this in detail, but in a big event, you can get like 12 gallons of water every 5 minutes or something. I don't remember the exact number. It'll cover it in my presentation shortly, but it's a lot.
Yes, your downspouts, just disconnecting that alone is eliminating a huge portion of that stormwater that could be entering your sanitary sewer lateral. So as far as the sanitary side of things, that's one of the best things you can do to reduce the demand on the system during a storm event. All right, well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to let Jay take it over and talk about creating a resilient yard.
We've got just one question. So Sheldon wants to know, why aren't my window wells a problem?
Why aren't they a problem? Well, then are you experiencing water coming through your window, Sheldon? I guess that would be my first question. If you're not, as long as your window wells are properly sealed, if you have a cover around it that's protecting water from moving over and into your window well during a storm, then you should be fine. In your window wells, people normally have gravel, so that allows any water that does get in to infiltrate and eventually go into the ground. So obviously, in a perfect world, those kind of grade level windows are just not ideal, but they're just part of your home. So if you do have them, again, you want to make sure that you're inspecting them, making sure there's no cracks, they're properly sealed, and that you have a good height on your window well cover.
All right. I'm going to start talking about how to, if you have those things figured out inside, and that's something important to note. If you have any issues with your lateral, or you think you're getting water in your basement, you should take care of that first. And then if you do have a good system going on in your basement, this is where you can do some extra things to make your yard more resilient. So that's kind of why we started with the inside. Now we're going to go out. And so why would MMSD want you to have some things like we call green infrastructure? It's basically things that collect water and manage them on your property. We've kind of covered this point, but it lowers the volume of water that actually gets through our sewers, rivers, and ultimately Lake Michigan. So it kind of reduces that stress on the system, helping reduce the risk of basement backups for you and your neighbors. And also, obviously, can also help reduce water pollution if it runs over the streets into the system. So some of the things you can do in your yard, we call it residential green infrastructure, real technical term, but basically some landscaping options you can do are soil amendments, rain gardens, trees, natural landscaping, and rain barrels. All right. So first I'm going to talk about rain barrels. Rain barrels are a good way to collect that water that comes off your roof and use it for watering your plants and in your garden. And you can, also use it for other household chores like washing your car, washing windows. And it's free. So that's a good thing. Helps you save money in your water bill. One point of emphasis, this water is not for drinking and definitely not for you or your pets. That's just something we have to note. It's not a water source for drinking. And this kind of goes back to that question of how much water comes down the gutters. In an average roof, like 1,000 square foot roof, so an average roof in Milwaukee, just a 1-inch storm, so just a pretty typical, good rainfall, 600 gallons come off of your roof in that rainfall. So if you kind of think about that, that's our average rainfall, in a year. And when it's raining pretty good like that, 12 gallons of rain come each minute down your downspout. And so a rain barrel would fill up in 5 minutes because they're typically around 50 gallons. So it's not necessarily the solution to all of your problems, a rain barrel, but it's something you can do to help reduce how much water gets out into the system and also into your yard. But it's not the thing that's going to solve all the issues. It is a pretty easy process. You just find a good downspout. You kind of set up your rain barrel next to it, level the ground that it's going to go on, make a good base with either gravel or tamping it down. And then with the rain barrel, the ones that we at least encourage you to use, has all the instructions about how to drill and go in your downspout. It's a little bit more complicated than this, but I'm not going to cover every detail. We have videos on our website you can look at. And we also have rain barrel workshops that will be coming up in April and May. So look for those, sign up for our newsletter, which we'll share the link to at the end of this. But yeah, I can't get into all the details in here, otherwise we'd be here for a lot longer than an hour. So what method is better? So on this slide here, you see this is kind of the old school way where people just actually hacked off the downspout and put the water right in the rain barrel. Kind of going back to what I was saying about how much water comes down your downspout, the problem with this style is that, you know, when that water is flowing at 12 gallons per minute and then it, you know, needs to overflow, it can then end up overflowing right next to your foundation, which is not what we encourage. We actually encourage something called a diverter system, where you have a piece that goes into your gutter. Instead of hacking it off, you drill a hole, put this piece in your downspout, and when the rain barrel fills up, the water can go back down your downspout, not next to the rain barrel, you know, causing issues next to your foundation. So if you do have one of these old systems, you can talk to us, call us, figuring out how to maybe switch it for a different style. And you can also just retrofit your rain barrel to have that system work with it. And you do need to maintain your rain barrel in the winter. Make sure that you put it away. It shouldn't be sitting there like a big block of ice next to your house. So yes, you do, and you should empty it periodically to make sure it doesn't get you know, really stale water. All right, next I'm going to talk about rain gardens or natural landscaping. So rain gardens are essentially just an area in your yard where you have, you know, your downspout leading to it, or, you know, maybe it's the side of your sidewalk or driveway where water flows, and you basically make a garden that can help collect it. And typically we use native plants or natural, you know, perennials. And there's a lot of really great benefits to these. It really is a beautiful thing for your yard and neighborhood. You know, it's beautiful blooms. It reduces that runoff that we kind of have talked about as an issue, because the plants soak up that water rather than letting it run off, which ultimately reduces the risk of flooding of your neighborhood and other drainage problems, which is a good thing. And then there's these other co-benefits that are really kind of nice. You know, we obviously are focused on that water, and you know, I'm sure you are too, but there's other benefits that come with it. When you plant native plants, you all of a sudden start getting these cool butterflies that you had never expected to see in your yard, and birds that come that are, you know, like also rare birds. I've had hummingbirds come to my yard, and I live in the city of Milwaukee. And it's just so amazing for my kids to be able to see that, which, you know, isn't normally the case in an urban lot. And so the other benefit is that these plants are adapted to the climate. So they're much easier to maintain. You don't need, once they're established, you don't need to water them. You don't need to fertilize them, because they're built for this environment. So there's a lot of really great benefits to them. And one of the reasons why we encourage natives is the roots, the systems that they send down to kind of get through our crazy climate changes that go, you know, extreme heat to really cold. These roots are sent down into the ground really deep, and they reduce erosion in your yard and soak up a ton of water. Versus, you know, you kind of think about your turf grass, so the typical grass. So these roots can go up as far as down as 6 feet or more, whereas turf grass is just about, you know, 1 inch, you know, 1.5 inches. Really does not soak up a lot of water. It doesn't, you know, really survive extreme heat or drought, where these other plants are really resilient. It would be the perfect word for it, to the climate, and also helping, you know, soak up that water that lands on your property. So I kind of mentioned some of this before, but essentially these are the features of a rain garden. You take an area where the, you know, the water's flowing from your downspout, and you just dig down. You make a shallow area, shallow depression, make sure it's flat and level, so the water spreads out evenly to get water to all the plants. And then you don't want an area that's wet all the time. So if you have an area that's just like sopping wet, it's wet for days and days and days. A rain garden will not solve that issue. That's something you might need to, hire a professional to kind of take a look at. But an area that gets wet for like, the day after a rainstorm, that would be the area that a rain garden would be suited for. So I just want to emphasize that fact. But yeah, it's pretty simple. There are some general rules of thumb. You obviously want it near a source of that stormwater. You want as much sun as possible. And the reason I say that is that lets you have more options for plants. Most native plants that are good for rain gardens like sun. There are some shady, plants that like shady areas. They just reduce how many options you have. You want it to be sure away from your foundation, 6 to 10 feet, and away from your lateral. So that sewer lateral that Lauren was referencing earlier, you don't want that right above it. You don't want to encourage, have water right above your lateral. This is kind of an example of one that complements the existing landscape. So rather than just having a garden out in the middle of your yard, you can kind of connect it to your other planting beds, like is done here, where it doesn't necessarily look like this separate thing. To get a little technical, the DNR does have a standard for our clayey soils. And so to determine how big your rain garden would need to be to kind of capture as much water as possible in a storm, there's a chart in this long handout where essentially you get the square footage of your roof that leads to your downspout. And then you multiply that by 0.25 or divide by 4. So a house here, you can use Google Maps, or you can just use a tape measure on the ground, looking, what roof goes to that downspout. You measure the length times the width, multiply that, it's about 500, and then divided by 4, it's around 100 square feet or so. I will say this is not an exact science. It depends on how deep you dig it, how many plants you put in. This is just a general rule of thumb. Now, I will say that this is a pretty big garden here for 100 square feet. But if you already have your downspout going out to your yard and it seems to be handling it okay, anything you do by putting native plants in is going to be better than just turf grass. Kind of going back to that diagram I showed you where the turf grass has roots like this. If you already have your downspout out there and you just dig an area and put some native plants in, it's going to soak up a ton more water than turf grass. It's at least double the amount of water in my experience, the rain gardens that we put in. So it's really beautiful. It soaks up more water, and it does good for the lake and our water supply. Another kind of thing you could do that's an easy thing, even if you're not up for doing the rain garden or it's not right for your yard, that area called the boulevard or the terrace area between the road and the sidewalk. Maybe you've noticed with this meltwater, there's areas that there's ponds where the water is not getting into the ground next to the sidewalk or on the sidewalk. All you have to do is just dig off that turf that's there in the boulevard, lower it a bit, put some, spread that topsoil back somewhere else, maybe along the side of your house to make the pitch better. And then you can just plant low growing native plants there. And one note, if you're not in the city of Milwaukee, you should check with your municipality to make sure this is good. But the city of Milwaukee, they typically do not mind that if you do this. Obviously don't dig super deep here. You just dig out the turf, put in your plants. And these are some recommendations of plants that can kind of resist some of that salt that comes off the streets. So prairie dropseed, black-eyed Susan, wild geranium, and big-leaved aster. And then these other ones here too, wild strawberry, pen sedge. And most of these are offered in a plant sale that we actually have going on now, which I'll reference here. But yeah, this is another simple thing you can do to help soak up water. Before you do dig a rain garden or something a little bit deeper, make sure that you do call Digger's Hotline just to make sure you don't have any utilities in the way. Just a note there, private utilities like any electric line to your garage, or if you have a irrigation system, Digger's Hotline does not know where that is. So that's on you to kind of know where your lines are on your own property. Just to give you perspective of what these native plants look like in 1 year. On the left here, this is just after planting a rain garden. This is kind of typically what they'll look like most of the summer after you plant them. So, you know, it might be a little disappointing that first growing season, but that's because the roots are being sent down to get ready and prepare for those shifts in climate and, you know, different rain conditions. This is that same garden just 1 year later. So you can see that that second growing season, that's when they really start to blossom and bloom, get tall. So, you know, that's something that you should just be aware of. Don't plant your plants too close, thinking that they're not going to grow big. They will spread out and really look beautiful the next year. All right, so tree planting. If you have a good place in your yard, trees are a great thing to soak up stormwater and also, again, have some of those co-benefits. So, you know, finding the right tree in the right spot can really help cool down the effects of the urban heat island that we have in our city. It creates a habitat for wildlife. It reduces air pollution, gives us oxygen, and it's really beautiful. So lots of great things about trees. And, you know, we encourage you to look into that if you can. Obviously, again, not right above your lateral. And then lawn care. So if you do have some area of lawn, there are some things you can do to make it more absorbent. And that also will in turn make it a healthier lawn that grows nicer. So cutting your grass at a higher setting will allow your roots of your lawn, you know, your grass to grow deeper and become more drought tolerant and look, you know, more green. If you do fertilize properly using, you know, organic fertilizers that are, you know, soak into the ground and don't run off, like some of the synthetic fertilizers. We sell a product called Milwaukee at local hardware stores you might be aware of. That's a good one. Aerating your lawn, especially in heavily trafficked areas, like if you have kids and things like that, will help reduce that soil compaction that happens and encourages the grass to take up more nutrients. And then soil amendments. Soil amendments are essentially compost that you spread a thin layer on your lawn. And I've done this a few times, and it just really helps increase the soil health and getting more absorbent. So those are some, you know, lawn care tips if you do have still some lawn you want to maintain. I had referenced earlier, you know, rain gardens, native plants. Some of these are tricky to find in your local hardware stores or, you know, landscaping stores. There are some in the area, but, you know, if you live in the city of Milwaukee, there's not a ton. So we offer a plant sale. It's open right now. We could put something in the chat here soon. And that offers plants for up to 50% off the typical cost of native plants. And so you order them now through April, and then you pick them up here at MMSDR headquarters on June 11th. So that is a really great offer. And then other ways you can be a Fresh Coast guardian and help protect the lake and your neighborhood. We have a Fresh Coast Resource Center. So if you have questions after this presentation and we didn't get to them, or you think of them tomorrow, the Fresh Coast Resource Center is here for you. You can call us. We're doing this workshop kind of through that today. We can help size your project. So if you're thinking about doing a rain garden, how big you should do it. And then obviously the plant sale I mentioned. And then, so this is the phone number here. We also have a contact us form on our Fresh Coast Guardians website. That is a good way to contact us with questions. A simple thing you can do right now during this presentation, but don't get too distracted, is text the word water drop to this phone number here, 414-296-4422. And this will send you a text, not only when it's necessary. It'll send you a text when there's a really heavy storm coming and our system is starting to get overwhelmed. This is just a reminder to use less water. So if, you know, maybe hold off the 10 loads of laundry you're, you know, thinking of doing on a rainy day. Take a shorter shower, you know, before the storm comes, empty your rain barrel. So this is just a nice reminder to kind of maybe reduce your water usage so we don't overwhelm our system. So that's a simple thing you can do. You can also submit, you know, what inspires you to protect the lake and, you know, protect our water. Why do you love Lake Michigan, want to protect it? maybe if you put in a rain barrel or rain garden, you can take a picture and send it in, and we'll send you a t-shirt like the one I have on, Fresh Coast Guardians t-shirt, that says, you help protect Lake Michigan and you're committed to doing that. So that's another way. That's on our Fresh Coast Guardians site, freshcoastguardians.com. You can follow us on social media. We have Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then this is that newsletter link. So this newsletter will give you the alert, when we're having more workshops, when the plant sale is open, other, things to keep you up to date. It's not more than probably 4 times a year, just when things are actually happening and critical. But it's the best way to kind of get first in line for a rain barrel workshop, which we have. And through those, you can get a free rain barrel. So that's a good deal. So this newsletter, I would encourage you to sign up. And Lauren, I don't know if you could put that in the chat, maybe.
For the newsletter?
Yeah, I could do it too. While we're,
Okay, I did put the plant sale link
thank
in the
you.
chat as well.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us, and then we can open it up to questions.
So feel free to drop any questions in the chat or the Q&A. We still have a few minutes left here for our presentation. I just signed up for water drop alerts, so I'm excited to get those notifications.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. And I forgot to put this in our slides, but Jay mentioned the contact us form for the freshwater site. We also have one as well. If you just go to the general MMSD website and click on what you can do, we have a whole series of pages devoted to managing water in your property that do a much deeper dive on water in your basement, foundation drains, gutter and downspouts, a lot of the information we covered today. And then there's a contact us form at the bottom, and you'll also find more information about pipe check. So if you have a question, I assure you there are 10 ways to reach us.
One thing too I really enjoy about your presentations is there are ways that even for people that might not be homeowners to also reduce their water impact. Like you mentioned about signing up for the water drop alerts, just using less water in your day-to-day chores like washing dishes or laundry, things like that. So, so even if you're not a homeowner, it's great to have those tips.
Yeah, and there are some other ones too. That we sometimes include, like just being a part of a litter cleanup. Because litter ends up in the river and lake if you don't pick it up, unfortunately. So those are they happen in the spring with Milwaukee River Keeper. That's another way you could get involved.
And then the last one, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, I was just gonna say we've got just a comment in the Q&A. Laurel says, really excellent presentation. So grateful for your ongoing efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. I just wanted to mention, in addition to the litter pickup and our Fresh Coast Center, we also have our home hazmat collection. So you mentioned things that renters can do and anyone can do. And now we actually have a permanent facility year round in both, I believe, Milwaukee and is it Menominee Falls too, Jay?
Yeah, well, there's one, yeah. And there's the one on the south side that is, like in our facility, so we kind of control it. It's a little bit easier to make sure it's open.
Yeah, but these are all making sure that you're keeping those kind of harsh chemicals and batteries and paint thinners and solvents, again, out of your system where they can damage things and cause damage to your home, and also water quality issues, and be able to safely dispose of them. So it's a great resource.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any last minute questions or comments, please go ahead and submit those. We're getting close to the end here.
Yeah, we did cover a lot, but like Lauren and I have to hold back with all the ideas we have. So we understand if you might have some questions that you think of later too, that we can always help you with. So
please reach out. And Jay, would you say if people needed to order plants, should they do that soon?
That's a good point. Yes, this year, well, the plant sale has gotten more and more popular, and last year we sold out. So I would recommend, if you not waiting till April 12th to order, I would do it. And I think we're actually already halfway sold out. So, it's only March 1st. So I would say, yeah, doing it sooner rather than later would be a good idea. And I mean, I know we don't make any money from that sale. It's just to get more natives out there. But I've bought them several times, for my own property. And I will say that they are a good, product. They do really well. So
I'm going to be ordering some this year.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the most amazing things to me is that, living in the city, planting, these plants, like just seeing, like they totally come. Butterflies, birds, like they find this stuff. I don't know how they do, but I have such different birds than my neighbor because of all the native plants I have. Like a hummingbird. That's crazy.
Sounds beautiful. We have a butterfly garden at the Tippecanoe Branch Library. If anyone's interested in seeing some of these native plants in action, we just put them in last year, and so they should be really coming back in full force this spring. So stop by and check them out if you're curious.
Yeah, you have a lot of good sustainable initiatives going on there. You have some pretty big green infrastructure in your parking lot too.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been really wonderful to see that expand over the last couple of years at library locations. I believe 5 or 6 of our branches now have permeable paving in their parking lots.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we're really excited to do what we can at the library too to incorporate more of that.
Yeah. Hopefully one day we'll get to do an in-person workshop and you can go point them out.
Yeah. So yeah, for everyone here too, just so you know, we are planning to return to in-person programming this spring, starting in April. So yeah. So Jay, I would definitely love to talk about that, developing that this year, but keep an eye on our calendar too, everyone, for those events coming up. Okay, so we've got one question in the Q&A here. Let's see, Kimberly wants to know, how high maintenance are rain gardens? I'm not a very good gardener.
I love that question. They are basically as high maintenance as you want them to be. They're actually really intended to, what we are trying to encourage is to reduce your maintenance. If you compare a lawn to a rain garden that's established, it's actually probably less work, because you have to mow your lawn every week, and if you go out of town, you have to worry about it, like growing too tall, hire someone to come over. The rain garden is really something, like I kind of said, it's basically as much maintenance as you choose to get into. So if you're gonna just be a starter gardener, actually on our plant sale we have these garden kits that are just already pre-selected plants, a few species, so just a few different types of plants. That would be my, the thing to encourage would be, like, don't buy a whole bunch of different ones because you'll get more confused about what's what. But, just getting like 2 or 3 different kinds of plants and maybe starting with that would be a good approach. All you have to do is like dig out the grass, put in some plants that you like, and then seeing how it goes. And, as you have success, you can add things that you're more confident about as you kind of become a better gardener. But you do not have to be an expert gardener. I didn't, come into this job as an expert gardener, and I still am not. I really try to keep to a few options of plants. And then the nice thing about it is that once they're established, you don't need to water them. You might need to weed a couple times, every once in a while, but once it's established, a lot of the natives actually keep weeds away. So they're pretty low maintenance, I would say.
And I would add to that, Jay, real quick. You mentioned planting just a few species, planting in masses so that clump them in 3 to 4 at a time, so it's easy to differentiate. And then I would say, though, that if you do have a tree in your front yard, I would not recommend planting a rain garden under a tree, because one of the things that makes it work really well is you need soils that infiltrate very well And if you have a lot of leaf matter building up on that, you're actually reducing the ability of that rain garden to infiltrate, and it requires more maintenance. So I know a lot of people that put one under a tree and really wish that they didn't. So
There was another question here from Matt. Do you need to ask city permission to install low mow grass options in boulevards?
no,
In the city of Milwaukee, no.
I think turf alternatives are free game if it's a grass species, like a slow growing fescue. There's a lot of like no mow or low mow blends on the market that you can actually just buy, and they're just a substitute for grass. But yeah, like Jay said, if it's like you're actually putting in native plants that might have a little more height, some cities you might want to check with them.
Right.
And I'd really advise keeping it. The reason why we suggested those, species that are under 1.5 feet is for safety, so that you don't have any visibility issues with pedestrians, little kids, cars.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with the one thing to understand, and I learned this last year, is like it's totally in the city's rights to come and do whatever they want in that area. And so a little garden I had planted got completely ripped up and destroyed, but I had nothing, so that's something you have to know, that if you do decide to put some natives, it could at some point just get dug completely through and you can't really do anything about it. So don't make it your favorite garden. Put too much time and effort into it. Yeah.
So I know we've kept you a bit past our time here. So if we don't have any more questions for Jay and Lauren tonight, I would say please feel free to follow up with them. I think, was it Lauren, did you mention there's like 10 different ways to get a hold of everyone?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll put in the Fresh Coast, like, contact us just in the chat too. I mean, it's a simple way that, any of the questions that would come from this, we could get to the right person.
Yep,
I'll
exactly.
just put that in there. So that's a quick way to get to us and routed to the right person. Probably Lauren or myself.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, everyone please check the chat there for that link. And again, keep an eye on the library's event page. We've got more workshops coming up with MMSD and also with Melinda Myers. So let's look forward to this spring. And we thank you for attending this evening, and this recording will be available hopefully within the next week after we wrap up here tonight. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, thanks for coming. Thank you, Jay and Lauren, so much for your expertise this evening. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing everyone again soon this month for more educational opportunities. So
yeah, thanks for letting us join you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you everyone for attending.